Hello, everyone. It's Joe Signorelli with OPG, our peer group advisor. Today, we have Anthony Vanette with us, who is the Director of Business Valuations and the Advisory Practice at the Joint Company. And Anthony and I have spoken. He has a really amazing planning opportunity and discussion that he's an expert in, which is gifting carried interests for hedge funds and private equity firms. So, Anthony, welcome. We're going to keep this short. A couple of brief questions for you to run through and explain to our audience at a very high level. Start with talking about the gift and estate tax rules, where they are, and how that's going to affect the carried interest planning.
Oh, very good. Thanks for having me today, Joe. Really excited to talk to you and your audience. So, as a precursor to the carried interest gifting conversation, I think it's important to first have that discussion about the federal gift and estate tax. So, the gift and estate tax is a product of a 40% tax rate and your lifetime gifts and estate less an exemption amount. Now, we control the split between what's gifts and what's estate. So, gifts are taxed at their fair market value at the date of the gift, when your estate is taxed at the fair market value at the date of death. So by gifting highly appreciating assets, we can lock in lower values than they would have in your state, whether that's held directly or fungibly in your bank account. That's a perennial fact pattern, but we also do have a one-time plan opportunity today. The current exemption level is about $13 million or $26 million for a married couple. That's scheduled to cut in half at the beginning of 2026. And that'll probably be around $7 million or $14 million for a couple. So we have a huge one-time planning opportunity and a real use it or lose it scenario for these next 2 years.
Yeah, very good timing for this. So talk a little bit more now about the actual process and idea behind the gifting of the carried interest, why it's so powerful.
Yeah, when we talk about playing that delta between fair market value at a locked-in date versus just being in your estate, that's where the carried interest starts to come into play for GPs of hedge funds, private equity, or venture capital. Carry is valued at maybe 10 to 20% of its future value at or near the start of the fund. 90% of the valuations I do in this space are either time zero, meaning kind of at our start of the fund, or even pre-time zero. Great conversation to have when you're starting a new fund, right? Talk to the GPs about their estate planning needs. Can we synergize compliance costs of the process? Can we maximize benefits? There needs to be time to run up the project, which can include engaging a trust and estate attorney and an appraiser who are both experienced in this niche. Obviously, keep your tax accountant in the loop as well, but the gift tax filing isn't a ton of work one way or the other, so that doesn't need to drive the project. The gift can be made as soon as decisions are relatively set about the fund, so not everything has to be locked in place. We're making assumptions. As long as we have our investment strategies, LPAs, those types of things in place, we're in a good place to make the gift. Really good time is between the initial closing and the final closing. When we have our PPMs in place, other memorandums in place, our LPAs are drafted or finalized, we can at least roughly project capital raising, we're in a good start. We'll work off those assumptions. As long as they're reasonable, we're in good shape to proceed. First year of the fund is viable as well, but after that, the benefits start to drop off.
Yeah, the key for the COOs and CFOs to have that conversation early on before, so you
Huge, really important. Great time to get everyone on the same page. Have some of these conversations people don't like to have about estate taxes, and the estate side and the tax side, a real combination of Ben Franklin's quotes.
Yep. Talk lastly a little bit about using a derivative potentially to do this and how that works with the vertical slice rules that the IRS imposes, and give a little color on that.
Yeah, huge factor, and I think really important for your audience to hear. So another idea to bounce around is carried interest derivative contracts. So we have the vertical slice rule that's under IRC 2701, and that limits how we can divide and gift interests. So basically, if we gift the carried interest in our fund, then we also have to give a proportional amount of any other interest we have in that fund, typically a direct interest, but also maybe a deemed contribution or other issues like that. That makes the gift just less effective as an overall tax planning tool, because the direct interest or other deemed contributions has much less appreciation potential. We also might run into issues with partnership admittance and then the administration of making a trust a partner of the fund. That can be cumbersome. So the derivative contract would be one explicit between the individual partner and his or her trust. It would stipulate that carried interest paid from the fund in excess of a hurdle amount will be paid to the trust by that individual partner. Additionally, we can stipulate specific payment dates, maximum payment amounts, really any factor you want to take into account for your own personal need, we can plan in there with that. The trust would technically buy the derivative contract from that partner, but you'd be making a gift in cash of the same amount. So functionally, it ends up being a gift. The derivatives are a great way that we can address a vertical slice rule. We don't have to deal with partnership issues. The value of the derivatives themselves can be about 30 to 50% of the actual carry value. So it can be even more powerful, effective from that way, depending on a lot of factors. I like the fact that the derivative contract divorces us from the timeline of the fund. We're no longer married to that. We can control that. Really awesome tool. I see used a lot in private equity. I wish I saw it more in hedge fund space because I think it's even more applicable there.
Yeah.
It gives a partner way more control and nuance to address their specific goals, which I think is the most important part of estate planning.
Great. That's great. Thank you for it's an incredibly complex topic that we're covering here in a few minutes, but I think this will sort of wet the whistle for a lot of COOs and CFOs to say this is a really big area to think about doing. So thanks for getting us started with that, and we will hopefully follow up and talk more about this with you. Thank you.
Happy to be here. Thank you.